And here is a special edition of the podcast that we shot and recorded at the India Bike Week. Let's get into it. Anand Dharmaraj, welcome to the Biker Radio Rodcast. Welcome to the long way home.
Thank you, my friend. I come from a place called Wayanad, which is in Kerala.
All right.
I grew up there.
Really?
My childhood, my parents still live there. I spent all my years from when I was a kid, as in my lower kindergarten, I've been in a hostel.
Okay.
So, because there was no schools in Wayanad at that time.
Right.
Like maybe there was a...
Where was that?
Ooty, as in Lawrence School, Ooty.
Oh, okay.
So that's where I went to school. When I left school, I think I was probably the happiest when I went nuts in terms of what all happened, and of course motorcycling, which was a big part of
Was it
my
already
life.
happening, motorcycling? I doubt it. In Ooty?
I think at about 12, I stole my dad's bike, pushed it down the hill because I didn't want him to know.
Right.
But I did understand the principle of the clutch, the accelerator, from the car.
Right.
So I said, that's what happens. So you release the clutch, you press the accelerator, and everything should work. So somewhere I pushed the Rajdoot 175 down.
Okay.
And I think I got it down, kick-started it, and then I let the clutch out, and I was in heaven.
Right.
I said, fuck, this is the best ever thing that I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
I just, somehow it clicked in my brain that motorcycles were beyond everything that I've imagined. And I mean, at 12, 13, you really don't know much.
But you had seen your dad ride in and out.
Yeah, and I had these two cool uncles who were on bobbies. And they would show up on these bobbies with the bell bottoms, the sunglasses. Yeah. And they were like, and they'd show up in school when I was in hostel. Yeah. They show up on these bikes. To me, it was like, wow, this is, freedom. And it represented a lot of things that I didn't want to at school.
Right.
But that sort of started my journey, if I call it, riding motorcycles as such. I joined engineering, or rather my dad put me in two colleges in Coimbatore.
Okay.
And I got kicked out of both. My dad wants me to do something, but I'm not really inclined. And finally, he put me in an engineering college, which was, I think, the 4 best years of my life in terms of everything that could happen to...
So what happened in college? Music?
Music, drugs, motorcycles, and somewhere a fire in the belly to say, life should change. I meant to say that pretty much it was rudderless in that sense at that 4 years. We were smoked up pretty much all the time, getting into fights, out in the night, pretty much trying anything and everything that you could get your hands on. But that time I had a interesting story because I forced my dad, or I think I continued to beg him to buy me a Honda, a motorcycle.
Okay.
So he bought me a Honda CD 100.
Okay.
I got myself a Honda CD 100 and I went to college. Came on my first break back to Wayanad, and there was a guy called Johnson who had a small shop, mechanic shop. So we used to hang out there quite often, and he was like the cool dude. He had a CB 400, he had a 600, and he was like the man from, the guy who owned the super bikes.
Right.
So we were sitting around chatting, and there was a guy with an RD 350. And so we were chatting in Malayalam and all that, and he said, pudhiya bike aano? I said, yeah, it's a new bike. He said, how much you get? I said, I get 80, 90 kilometers to a liter.
Oh my God.
So I looked at him and I said, you want to exchange? He said, look at me, are you serious? I said, here's the keys. So I tossed him the keys, and I had an RD in my hand.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so...
He was getting, 18 or something?
Yeah, it was my fucking 15 or 16 at that time. So I had an RD 350. It was like...
Unbelievable.
Unfucking believable. My dad didn't know for the longest time. I think I went to his office one day on the RD, and he looked at me and he said, what bike is this? I thought I bought you a black and red Honda CD 100. I said, no, I exchanged it. He said, why? I said, it's a better bike. He said, okay, where's the papers? I said, what papers? Give me a tight slap. So he said, what are you doing? I mean, I understand you wanted a different bike, but where are the papers? Where's the insurance? I said, I don't know. I just gave him the keys and I took the keys from him.
It's got wheels.
Yeah, it's got wheels. And so that was my mode of transport for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
The RD was my beloved sort of everything. I spent all my time on it.
Yeah.
Then I went to do my master's in electrical electronics because I wanted to see America, not because I was like some, wanted to get a big education of some sort. So I applied and I suddenly found myself in a master's program in New York, doing electrical electronics engineering and designing chips as in processors or any kind of microchips. Those 2 years, I think 1.5 years that I finished my master's, suddenly I felt, oh, I'm not so dumb. So that master's program was sort of something that I suddenly found myself doing well, getting decent scores, and I kind of was enjoying the whole, if I call it this, designing chips and understanding the logic behind how it works. And I was always sort of a little curious about these things anyway, from how things work kind of a thing, you know, taking shit apart and trying to put them together and not being able to put it together, things like that. I finished my master's and I moved to California to have a job, to get a job. So to speak of recession, I stayed with a cousin of mine. He was very accommodating. And my first salary after a temporary job, my temporary job was I think $1,200 odd a month. I got my first paycheck and I opened the classifieds. I went through.
Motorcycle?
Yeah.
How did I know?
I said, Honda 750 Nighthawk.
Oh, God.
So I call him and I say, it's $750.
Yeah. Oh.
I said, I'll give you $700.
Yeah. Cash.
He said, yeah, you come over. And I had a motorcycle.
Wow.
So I would show up at work on this motorcycle with, and I would go to grocery shopping. So it was, you know, I worked there for a long time, I think almost some 7-8 odd years. But coming back to motorcycles, I am sitting one day and this guy walks over, Mike walks over and he says, you ride? I said, yeah. No, I ride motorcycles.
Yeah.
So he says, okay, you know, my name's Mike and you want to ride on Sunday? I said, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So we went on a ride and we were in the bottom of what is called, it's called Highway 9. It heads up to a place called Alice's Restaurant. Okay. So you see a lot of magazines doing reviews. And so Alice's Restaurant is on top of a little set of hills close to San Francisco. And from the base of this side of the Bay Area, it's absolute beautiful twisties. Like fucking racetrack material.
Wow.
And so we would be out on Saturdays and Sundays, early mornings, on weekdays. At 6:30, we would be out riding these motorcycles, riding Mike and myself. And we would be going up carving these mountains, going to Alice's, have coffee, breakfast, and head back down. So we were at Alice's one day, and again, you know, friends said, hey, let's go, you know, let's go for another spin. So I said, yeah, okay. And then this one guy walks up to it and says, have you been to a racetrack? I said, no. Well, you guys should try it. You're going to kill yourself.
Wow.
So we
Who's
were
the other guy?
No, so some random guy. So guy. He sees Mike and me regularly there, right?
Okay.
And there are others, and he said, you guys should probably go to a racetrack.
Yeah.
So I said, I mean, I've never been to a racetrack.
Right.
Mike is very hardworking, extremely diligent, while at the same time a wild side of him, you know. So he's really, really sort of one of those guys who can figure out anything kind of a thing. So before I knew it, we had signed up for a class at Willow Springs Motorcycle Speedway, down close to in Mojave Desert.
Yeah.
And it's a 6-kilometer track, and it's called the fastest track in the West.
Okay.
Because it's got a 6th gear, flat, knee down, pin throttle corner. That's how fast it goes. It's about 6 kilometers, and it is absolutely like a blast because it's got elevation changes, it's got gradients, it's got decreasing radius corners, and it's got this flat out 6th gear, pinned throttle, knee down corner.
Oh my God.
And we all went, signed up for class, and before we knew it, we started, I was addicted to it.
Right.
And we started signing up for what's called 12 months, 3rd weekend, Friday practice, Saturday practice, Sunday races. So I had my job. So Mike and me would park, load the bikes up on Friday, get to the track, pitch a tent, use the toilets in the track. Saturday was practice, Sunday races, wind up and head back, and Monday back at work.
Oh, wow.
So this routine was 12 months of the year, rain or shine. And it doesn't matter, you're out in the desert, and Mojave Desert has an Air Force base.
Yes.
So they would fly the F-16s,
Yes.
would basically come down and buzz us on the straight. So you're holding like maybe 240, 280, 260, 270, and they would just come and for the fuck of it, have a little fun, buzzing you over that straight.
Oh my God.
So it was absolutely like a surreal experience to be there. And we wanted to save money by living in the tent. That, I think, was a turning point in my life in terms of discipline, needing to think what it means to have camaraderie in terms of motorcycles. All along you're in the, when you're riding, of course, we wave to each other, people are very nice. But this set the bar at another level. I couldn't believe that I was in this space. And my first season, I pretty much finished last. So at that point, I said, Mike, maybe I'm not, good. Maybe it just sucks. He said, listen, what? I think the bike's too much. Let's go let's buy a 400.
Okay.
So Yamaha had the FZR 400, which came from the evolution of the RD 350 with the last of the two strokes.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh.
So the FZR 400 was the one that sort of replaced
for
the
me,
RD 350.
The RD 350, the story stops there, right? I had no idea about it.
Which is a 4-stroke.
Right.
And the FZR 400.
Would you suddenly start feeling underpowered from us? Climbing down from, a 750?
Yeah, from a 750.
To a 400?
Yeah, surprisingly, I think the power wasn't my issue.
Okay.
I was not able to, I had to step down to understand corners. I had to step down to understand lines, what it meant to be riding with technique rather than the power.
You could add that on whenever you wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So the 400 was my bike. I mean, Mike was also in the same class. And I think the next couple of years was spent every month racing. And the rewards were slowly sort of, if you call it, personally as well as, finishing on the podium, finishing the season, sort of started to flow in. And I found myself in a good space. The first couple of sessions I used to race at Willow Springs, then the California Championships, then the AMA Championships, which was the American Motorcycle Association Championship. So we started racing at different racetracks in the US.
Okay.
And I think I was the odd Indian in this whole 300 odd people who were sitting, at the grid, or rather in the pits. Okay. But, people like John Hopkins who raced MotoGP, Chris Ulrich, a lot of famous names were all in the same pits. They would race in the same class.
Wow.
They were, of course, obviously...
Something to look up to, definitely.
Yeah, mad. Right. So you learned, okay, they would help you out. That I think that is the other part of it, is that I would spend time on these things. I would have a crash or I would have a low side. But there'll be always somebody next to you saying, listen, take my brake lever because you've got a race coming up. You've broken this, you've changed this, I'll help you with this. That camaraderie is something that I think I've carried on to say that is what I think biking is about.
So you'd go by that time you had already started taking the bike apart and putting it back together, and were you getting your hands greasy and dirty and...
Yeah. So I started understanding, how these things work and valve clearances and cylinders and pistons and gearbox, especially maintenance, and taking it to a race spec. How do I get a little bit more power out of this motorcycle, and figuring out, can I do it myself? Maybe you screw it up maybe once or twice, but then you end up and you realize that the best way to learn is when you fail. It's
yes,
sort of...
absolutely.
And slowly this whole thing of going to ride dirt started. So we started riding dirt in various places across the US, mostly, of course, California, because Hollister was the Hells Angels capital. But Hollister is, I think, 600 odd hectares of dirt. So you could go in there and spend, I don't know how many ever days you wanted riding dirt.
So you enjoyed dirt as well?
Yeah, because I realized two wheels move the soul.
Right.
So I said, I have to learn.
Yeah.
And if I don't learn something every day, what's the point?
Right.
Yeah, so I sort of then moved back to India.
Oh.
In 2001.
Why?
I just wanted to be back here.
Yeah?
I think I like the chaos. So I enjoyed being in India. I just somehow found that, yes, as much as I enjoyed motorcycling, I didn't really fit into this whole thing of knowing that the rest of my life is EMIs. You buy a house, you buy the next big car, you buy the next house, and you want a swimming pool, and then you want this, and you're sort of stuck in that zone never-endingly, So so my journey back to India started. I think I came back. I think I started working at Intel. When I moved back to India, I had the bike that I had brought with me, and I used to ride around on my own. And two things happened. I wanted to buy an RD again.
Okay.
So I joined this forum called RD Dreams. There's a guy called Ron Chinoy.
Right.
Again, an eccentric genius, if I want to call it he designs two strokes, and that's his forte. What he does is at a very, very different level of understanding the technicalities of two strokes. So when I moved back to India, I sort of bought a RD350, and a friend of mine at Intel said, we should take it to Ron. So I bought the bike, I go to Ron's basement, and Ron is one of those people who never steps out of his house.
And Ron's in Bangalore?
Ron's in Bangalore.
Okay.
So he does two-stroke designs. He designed his own CDI kit. Everything is, like, to him, it's perfection.
Right.
So he looks at me and he goes, it's fucked, he says. So I said, okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
So he says, leave it with me. Before I knew it, what he'd done, and then we built, once that bike was sorted out, he said, Anand, we need to do something because, let's build a bike.
Right.
So on this forum, I casually posted saying anybody wants to go to the racetrack on one post. So some 16, 18 people showed up. We rented, I called the racetrack in Coimbatore and I said, how much is it to rent the track?
Yeah.
So they said it's 5,000 rupees a day. So
Wow.
this was like 2002, 2003.
That's a bit.
So we had 18 people at the racetrack, all on two strokes.
Right.
And Prashi, this friend of mine, on a
Yes,
Royal
of
Enfield
course.
Flying Flea.
Yeah.
So that was the evolution or the start, if I want to call it, of sort of track days.
Yeah.
Or because I was missing the ability to, be out and ride, just get your kicks, if you call it that.
Right.
So it was an interesting journey for me from, and I was working, but every day at about 3:30, 4 o'clock, I would push off to his house, and I would be sitting there till late nights and, doing something with this, building this motorcycle. It was an RX. So that evolved slowly into sort of track days, and I continued. And at some point, I think 2005, 6, I had met Prashi just before that, and he said one day, Anna, we're going to go to the Himalayas. Have you been? I said, no, I haven't.
Yeah.
It's 2005. Before he knew it, I was on a train to Delhi with about 10 friends and a rental bike from Karol Bagh in Naiwala.
Yes.
So we did, we spent, I think, about 4-6 weeks roaming the mountains. And again, that was a second or third part of my life where this evolution of sort of saying, what do I need in life?
Right.
So I was feeling obviously a little stagnant, going to work.
Right.
Money was good.
Yeah.
You're getting paid well, you're in an IT job, you're in a nice cubicle, everything looks fine and dandy, and you can buy whatever you want. And then suddenly I was in this world of saying, shit, I haven't seen my own country.
Right.
I don't know. I know everything else. I know Niagara Falls and I know the Eiffel Tower and all of this, but I don't know my own country.
Yeah.
So that really sparked the wanderlust in me to say, and by the time I met Prashi, this guy was something else.
Yes.
He had traveled 29 states in 29 days.
Yes.
By the time he was 26
Yeah.
years old on an Enfield. And he had a collection of motorcycles and cars and parts. And I'd never met somebody who was, if I want to call it, not just passionate, but technically sound. He knew Delhi. We would go into gullies. We'd talk to people in some weird, little places. And that guy would open his doors. We'd be welcome. And there'd be stacks of motorcycle parts inside. Velo sets, BSAs, Java stuff. Wow. All in attics.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So
I've
it
seen
was a
some of
very,
those.
very different world.
Yeah.
Sharmaji and Lalli Singh and this fellow and that fellow.
Yeah.
And I was like, how does this fellow know all these guys?
Right.
You sometimes need a spark in your life.
Yeah.
And the spark came in the form of Prashi.
Yes.
And after all this.
Yes.
So one fine day he said, listen, Anand, let's do the raid to Himalaya. I said, okay, why not? So before we knew it, we had signed up for the raid. He built an Enfield. I was the first day I was on an Enfield. Both of us were on an Enfield. And we had this mad group of people literally camped out in Shimla. at the Himalayan Motorsport headquarters with Vijay Parmar, who's equally mad, or rather I should say sadistically mad and fun. We were there and we rode the raid. I think we just evolved, sort of immersed in that madness. Minus 5-10 degrees, October, absolute cold. Didn't know what the hell was happening, but still was having a great time.
Right.
The next year we took part, a guy called Bhaskar Ramani who lives in the US,
Right.
Prashi, myself, Aditya, a couple of guys. And they're all living in different parts of the world because somehow this is connected is why I'm mentioning this.
Yes.
And we were there on WR 250s, 450s and a Charisma that I had built.
Oh.
And we were ripping it. Out of the 22 odd stages, 18 of the fastest stages were set by us.
Wow.
So we were beating cars. Bhaskar was on fire. Prashi was on fire. I was having a great time tailing these guys.
Yeah.
So we were in second, third, fourth, first, second, third, second, third, fourth, in that order throughout this raid.
Yeah.
And so the raid to Himalaya sort of was adventure and a challenge because it was 7 days, 2,200 odd kilometers, altitude. Obviously, you're dying for oxygen. The motorcycle's dying for oxygen.
Yeah.
You're in absolute blistering cold.
Yeah.
The last flag off was from Kargil at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
when all you can see is white. That's it. Your fingertips are blue, your nose is blue, your lips are about to fall off.
Right.
We're climbing, I think, Fotula.
A good welcome back to India.
Yeah, I was like, fuck, I love it. This is the chaos that I missed.
Yeah.
And it sets the spark in terms of not just riding, learning, but the camaraderie that has been formed with people who are equally mad or eccentric in that sense.
Yeah.
So the raid took us on one path of forming bonds, and post that is when I decided to start IndiMotard.
Right.
So I said, listen, I can't go to fucking work and think about motorcycles.
Right.
It's like this beautiful saying that says, I'd rather be on a motorcycle thinking about God than sitting in church and thinking about a motorcycle. So
that's a nice one.
the track days were continuing to happen, and I had a small retirement, we call it, had a voluntary retirement package.
Right.
So some small amount of money that Intel said, listen, if you want to take this up, it's up to you.
Right.
So, all right, great. We took it up. I took it up and I said, I met Prashi at a coffee shop one day, and I said, Prashi, I want to get out of this. Let me start something.
Wow.
He said, let's do it. I'm with you. So I went and bought, I think, 10 Enfield Classics.
Okay.
And we imported 6 Husqvarnas from Singapore. SM610 super motards.
Okay.
And before we knew it, in 2008, we had our first tour in the mountains. And
Where in the mountains?
So we started from Shimla.
Okay.
We carted these bikes to Shimla on trucks, got to Shimla, and the customers all flew in, and I have to thank them really.
Seriously?
Yeah. So we started the tour in Shimla, and all of these people, I'm obviously still connected to them today. They've been super kind, super, awesome people to trust.
Yeah.
Put that trust in me to say, okay, let's give this guy a chance to run a tour.
Right.
So everything was new in this industry of motorcycle tourism.
Okay, so you are getting into motorcycle tourism with
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Because IndiMotard by itself is not one thing.
Yes.
It's so many things.
Yeah, that's the funny part, because I think somewhere there is
So what all is it?
So yeah, there's 3, if I call it 3 parts to what we do.
Okay.
One is IndiMotard, which is the parent company, which is motorcycle tours, what I call luxury adventure tours.
Wow.
We have TWO, which is the track school, track riding school. And then we have the Grease House, which is the garage.
Yeah.
So the idea was to sort of bifurcate this into 3 parts.
Wow.
Just because it's race, build, tour.
Yeah.
So 3 parts to
Race,
this whole-
build, ride.
Yeah, race, build, ride, exactly. So we sort of sorted this on a wing and a prayer, if I want to call it, because I had built a house in Bangalore, and I built that house out of mud.
Really?
Yeah, so I didn't want to, I was in this zone of, maybe I am still, this eco-friendly, and I didn't want to use electricity, and, and I wanted to use no paint, no tiles.
Right.
The roof is terracotta, sort of jack arches.
Wow.
Lot of light.
Yeah.
Solar, this, that.
Right.
So, and I built a basement for my motorcycles. So I had a little like 800 square feet basement with a nice little ramp and tools, everything sorted out, and 2 floors of this structure.
Okay.
So that was where we started IndiMotard.
Okay.
In the basement, and initially it was just looking after my bikes, and then slowly people started coming by and saying, can you fix this, can you do this, and then slowly I had to obviously hire a mech or a person, because I found myself working like 18 hours a day kind of a thing. So slowly, of course, I hired the first mechanic, RF, and we were there for about, I think, couple of years while the tours were going on.
Yeah.
So I ran tours in the mountains, primarily in obviously in the Leh Ladakh area, south a couple of tours. So we started doing these tours in different parts, and a lot of logistics of transporting motorcycles to all these places.
Yes.
Trucks and backup vehicle, and my whole intent was to provide a luxury adventure. So the day might be difficult, but everything is included in the package, which means that there is a backup vehicle, there is a mechanic, there's a doctor, your luggage is carried, your hotels are booked, you've got a barbecue, you've got bonfire, you've got everything.
You got the experience.
Yeah, you've got an experience. The day I'll take you through some tough stuff.
Yeah.
And depending on the crowd, we'll take you through, as tough as you want it to be.
Yes.
We slowly expanded from there, started running tours in Cambodia,
Okay.
Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and then into South Africa, Europe, primarily former Yugoslavia, so Croatia, Bosnia, Kosovo, all of those parts.
So outbound.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I didn't want to go into places that have infrastructure.
Right.
Because then it's like saying anybody can go, right?
Right.
So my intent was places that are hard to access, and so I would go do the recce. In Sri Lanka, for example, we did, I think, up to Jaffna, during sort of post-war Jaffna.
Right.
So some bizarre experiences that we've had in all of these places.
Yeah.
But even there, we would find ourselves finding routes and places where the signboards on both sides says, don't step off the path because there are mines.
Right,
So there was a little thrill in all this,
Right.
Finding places that were, I want to say a little bit on the edge. So that sort of the tours kicked off. Then the garage, of course, started becoming more performance-oriented, building motorcycles for races,
Right.
Rally bikes, performance in terms of suspension, understanding
Is this the grease house part of it?
Yes.
Yes.
So the track school continued to run, and the grease house became a feeder into people who understood. And I think my philosophy was, just like I got into racing and then understood that a motorcycle has to be a certain way.
Right.
I think the reason that I have an open space is that I want people to be aware of what's going into their bike.
Right.
Right? I mean, I don't have a closed door policy, as in I said, you can sit here, you can sit, watch what's happening, we show you the parts. You want to work on it, there's DIY, you can sit, you can even participate, because then it makes it easier for you to understand your own bike, not only just because of mechanically, but also you sort of say, okay, I know why this is behaving a certain way.
Right.
So that became sort of, that's how it continues even today. The track school sort of evolved into, I want to say, a really, really nice set of people who come, have a beautiful 2 to 3 days of riding, learning. So we have different levels. We have a level 1, we have level 2, etc. So people come, enjoy being students, and then from being students, you say, listen, I want to ride as what I call open track time.
Right.
And I think part of my whole journey was from where I came from is to be able to, I want to say it with a measured thing, saying giving back. So saying each of you become better in terms of being educated riders. You will stop being an idiot on the road. Right? And not just for yourself, but for others.
Yes. I see this, this is the most stable geometry, the triangle.
Yeah.
And you have 3 things going, and that provides extreme stability to whatever you're doing.
That's a good point.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is going to be such an explorative journey, not only for me, but also for our listeners.
Sure.
Thank you so much for being on the Biker Radio
my pleasure.
Rodcast
My
on the
pleasure.
long way home.
Of course.
And have a great India Bike Week.
Thanks a lot, Shandy. Wonderful to see what you do. Glad to be on it. And we'll catch you soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.